What's going on? This is Dr. Elliot Gann, aka Philip Drum and Filthy Beats, Executive Director of Today's Future Sound. We're here at Marlin's Ninja Studios, about to get into some beat making, and you are tuned into Today's Future Sound and Speak with Beats, School of Sound. So let's get into it. If you want to make beats, you want to do it right away, you downloaded Fruity Loops and you want to get right into it, you have to know how to program drums. So that's what we're going to start with. So the first thing that you want to understand here is what these colors are about. You got blue, you got red. Some people see gray. If you're colorblind, you're screwed. But the first one right here, this is your one. The kick, typically in hip hop, rock, most other forms of electronic music, and most music you'll listen to, the kick hits on the 1 and on the 3. And they're giving you the colors here to indicate where the 1, 2, 3, and 4 are. So we put our kick on the 1 and the 3. Except it's a really terrible kick drum sound. That's the standard kind of Fruity Loops techno kick drum sound. We don't want that. So I would use some of these Illmind drum sounds, and I recommend that you get them. But what I'm going to do, because you probably have, we want to assume that you have just the standard version of Fruity Loops and not drum sounds. We're going to go to Packs, and then you're going to click on Legacy, because we're going to start out with some boom bap hip hop. We'll click on Drums, and we'll go to Hip Hop. And you're going to be straight if you use any of these kick drum sounds. That's a nice solid kick. So we're going to click and drag it into the channel right here, and it will replace the bad techno drum that was in there before. I'm going to pick a hi-hat as well. That's a nice hi-hat, so we're going to drag that into the channel. The other thing you can do is, if you don't want to drag it in there, if your dragging game is not on point, you can just click in the channel that you're targeting, and you can go down. Let's pick a snare drum. That's a nice snare drum. You right-click on it, and you can say, Send to selected channel or focus plugin. That's the one that's lit up green. This says hat right now, and it gets sent in there. So now we got our snare drum, which will go on the 2 and on the 4. Now right now we're at techno speed, 130 BPM. We're not making any kind of techno or house music right now. So you can do two things. You can left click and drag down, or if you want to jump, you just right click and let's go to 90 BPM. Now most old school boom bap beats are going to be somewhere in the order of 80 to 100 BPM. Maybe 105, maybe a little bit lower, but boom bap typically is going to be somewhere in that range of tempos. So we've now set our tempo to 90 BPM. I'm a 92 BPM kind of guy, or 93 because it's my favorite year in hip hop. Let's do 93. Kick, snare, just one after the other. And it's just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's add some hi-hats in to kind of glue it together. I'm going to right click and go to fill each 2 steps instead of manually clicking it in. It's just easier. It's a little kind of cheat shortcut. You want to add a little flavor to it? Let's put our kick drum on the ghost note right there. Gives it a little flair. Maybe add one more kick right here. That's on the and. Pretty standard hip hop beat, right? So now we're up and running with a kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat. If you want to give a little more flavor and kind of give it more of a humanized feel, you can go here and click on the interactive step sequencer piano roll overview. It's telling you this up here. When you hover over anything, it'll tell you what it is in the upper left-hand corner. So you click on there, and it now shows you a preview of what is in the piano roll. What's the piano roll? The piano roll is the editing matrix that comes up here when you click here. And we have our hi-hats. This down here is velocity, as it's indicated up there. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring down the hi-hat in velocity every other note. And let's see how the groove changes. Just a little bit. Let's bring it down even more, see what happens. This is kind of more of a humanized feel. So we got a little bit more of a groove there going on with the hi-hats. You want to probably bring the kick drum up a little bit. The kick drum and the snare should always be the loudest. You don't ever really want your hi-hat being louder than your kick drum or your snare. The other thing that we want to think about as well, and this is more of an advanced thing, but I want you guys doing it now from the jump, is you want to think about where you're routing your drum sounds. You want to route each one of these individual sounds, meaning your kick, your hi-hat, and your snare, through its own respective mixing channel. So, what's a mixing channel? I will show you. We go to View, and we take a look at the mixer. Here we have the mixer. Now, whatever drum sound or channel you click on here in the channel rack, it will automatically select on the mixer whatever channel it's running through. Now it indicates to us, channel, it also really means track. our kick drum is automatically routed through 1 if you start using the default setting. If we click on hi-hat, we'll go ahead and click on it and it will say track 2. So it's now running through track 2 right here on the mixer. And more likely than not, since it's third down, the snare drum is going to be going through track 3. So we have that going through track 3. Now I personally like to label my tracks. We want to keep the kick drum is specifically going to go through track or insert 1 as it's called. And I don't want anything else running through that unless it's going to be partnered with, it's going to be laid over with the kick drum. That's meant specifically for the kick drum. So what we can do is we can go ahead and click on this channel, and if you right click on it, you can go to channel routing and route selected channels to this track. And what that's going to do is it's going to label whatever is selected, which in this case is HIP kick 3, and it's going to add that right here. We can even add some colors on, say, on the next one, on the hi-hat. We'll go ahead and click on that, and let's right-click on that. If you're on a Mac, 2-finger right-click. If you're on a PC, just right-click. And we're going to go to Rename Color. Let's pick a color, and I'll just pick one of these guys over here. So now we go to Insert 2, and we'll go to Channel Routing, route selected channels to this track, and it names it and gives it that color there. So just want to do that just to really keep things organized and keep track of where your drum sounds are. And that's going to help you when you're mixing too, when you're trying to get your levels right. And your drums always should be some of the loudest. In a track, your drums and your vocals should be loudest. They should drown out everything else, but they should definitely be the loudest. All right, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to go here and we're going to maybe give it another color. Let's label it with yellow. Cool, we got that. And then we'll go ahead and have that here. Channel routing, route selected channels to this track. So we now have that. Great. And we also have our drums, as we can see in the piano roll. And let's snap back to the step sequencer view like this. Got a pretty slamming beat. Now, if you want to make your song, you want to get immediately to making a song, what you're going to need to do is view the playlist. And we're lucky that it's already in bar mode, right? Our grid here is going by bars. Sometimes it might not be like that. It might be instead by quarter beat. So you don't want to do that because then you're going to end up putting it not directly on the one on the first beat of the first bar. You want to make sure that with the magnet, which is your snapping, your quantizing, you want to make sure that it's set to bar. And then we're going to go ahead and using the paint tool, click and drag, don't let go, and just paint in your drums like that. And that lays a foundation. Right, that's like the skeleton of the beat. The drums are like the skeleton. They hold it up. It's the really substantial portion. So we got that now on our sequencer, which they call the playlist. And if you want to toggle between the channel rack, which used to be called the step sequencer in version 11, and hear what's going on here, you have to hit this button right here, which toggles between them. Now it's in sequence mode, your channel rack, and now it's in the playlist mode. So you can hear whatever's in there, you're going to hear. The other way you can do that is you want to rapidly do it. Just click on this little play, pause song. You just click on that. And the same thing here in the channel rack, you just go ahead and click on there, and it switches back to pattern mode so you can hear whatever you have here in the pattern. All right, so we have that. Maybe you want to add a little bit of something on top of it. Maybe you want to give it a little more flavor. You could look for like an open hi-hat. Yeah, let's go to Legacy, Hip Hop. Let's see if we can find an open hi-hat. We should be able to. Scroll down. And let's go to hat. Let's see if they have any open hi-hats. Out of all those guys, that's the closest to an open hi-hat. It's not exactly an open hi-hat, but let's see what we can do with that. Maybe throw that in channel 4 right here, and perhaps put it on the and of the 3. This is the 3 because this is the 1, that's the 2, that's the 3. And is in between, halfway in between the 3 and the 4. So we're going to go ahead and pop it in there. Get a little something. Let's try real drum kits. Maybe that has an open hat. That would be good. That's more like an open hi-hat. That's perfect. Let's try that. Give it a little more, a little something. A little loud, so let's bring the volume down on that. Okay, so right now we have a 1 bar loop because there are 4 beats in 1 bar. In Fruity Loops, in version 12, you now have the option of just pulling this over, and it shows you these ones that have not been activated yet. If you want to activate them and you want to make a 2-bar loop, you just have to go ahead and click there. So as soon as you do that, it becomes active. Put our kick on the 1 and the 3 of the second bar here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put our snare on the 2 and on the 4. We can just go back here and do our shortcut. We could click it in by hand. That's kind of a pain, so let's just go back over here. 2-finger right click on the Mac and right click on the PC. Got our hi-hats. The only thing we have to remember is that we had that kind of cool groove going on before. So I'm actually going to undo that and go back to the piano roll. I toggle by hitting this button here. And we're going to learn how to easily copy and kind of clone these guys. So by holding down Control and then clicking, we can highlight, and then we can go ahead and hold Shift. And Shift allows us to clone the notes. So we got our hi-hats there. Let's go ahead and give that a shot. We want to delete this one because that's an extra one. Pull this back. All right, so then we need to add, oh, looks like we went over our pattern a little bit. So let's check that out. We probably have one extra hi-hat at the end. Indeed, we do. We got to delete that. The thing about Fruity Loops that you have to know that's really important is that if you have any kind of note, just barely a microsecond going over the bar right there, it thinks that we have a third bar. So we have to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to zoom in just so you can see that. We're going to use the zoom feature here. Zoom in on that, and you can see it's just barely sticking out over it. So let's delete that. Go back to our paint tool, delete it. We should be good. We'll close out of the piano roll window, toggle back to our step sequencer. I like it better on the and, so put it on the and. And you know what? I'm going to take the open hat off there. You delete the note by right clicking. So I'm just going to have it at the turnaround. That's the end. Maybe add one more kick drum, maybe say here. That's kind of nice. Cool. So we have a basic boom bap drum pattern there. I'm going to show you one other trick to kind of give it a different feel. But it was just Jay Dilla's birthday, and for those folks that like Jay Dilla, like that kind of wonky, slumpy kind of drum beat, one of the ways you can immediately get that going with not too much effort is if you shift over the hi-hat just slightly. Now there's a couple ways we can do that. The first way is you can go ahead and change the grid here from, say, quarter beat snap to, let's go to half step. And let's just pull that hi-hat over like this. Let's see how that sounds now. It gives it kind of a nice swing. So what we can do is, once we've done that, let's snap the snapping back to, say, beat. And I'm going to pull this over. I'm going to clone it again. Hold down Shift, click, drag that over there, and it just clones it. So let's try that for this one as well. Let's see how that sounds once we finish doing that. So for the first bar, it gives it a little more dun dun ka dun 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 ka, right? And so we can do the same thing here too. We'll just clone that hi-hat pattern. We'll delete these guys. Hold down Control, click and select. And I have no delete on there, so I'm going to have to hit Control X. On the PC, you can just hit the delete button. Select these guys. Go ahead and clone them. Bring them over here. And I'm bringing the velocity up so you can hear it a little more. Bringing the velocity up on all of them. Cool. So that's one way you can do drums in FL Studio. The other way that you can do drums is there's also the FPC. So there's two ways to add another instrument or channel here. You can either go up to Add, go to Channel, and then go to FPC. Or if you're feeling kind of lazy and if you want to be efficient with your time, you simply click on the little plus down here. And that's going to do the same thing and give you the options of like, what would you like to add? Now the cool thing about the FPC, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute these other channels here. I'm going to turn those off. The cool thing about the FPC is that it comes with grooves and preset MIDI drum patterns. What does that mean? Well, I'll show you. Right now it's on polka, which I find unacceptable, so we're not going to use polka. We're going to go to Funky Drummer, since that's the most famous drum break of all time in hip-hop just about. We'll go to hip hop loops, go to funky drummer. And what it's going to do is it's going to load up a MIDI score. We have funky drummer, which is 1 bar long. So I'm going to pull this back. Let's make this, oops. Actually, you know what? Let's take this to another pattern because it's a two bar pattern because of the drums that are here. That's good to know. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this on a new pattern. We'll hit plus, and we'll call this drummer. We'll paste that in there. I hit Command V or Control V on the on PC. So we got funky drummer, but it's using pretty bad stock live drum sounds. So it looks like this right here. That's our kick drum, right? So let's go ahead and let's grab a kick drum and chuck it in there. Before we do that, you want to go ahead and delete all these ones. As you can tell, this is highlighted, that's active, so we hit delete, it will delete that, and that, and that, and that. So we'll delete those, and we can go ahead and we'll drop a kick drum in there. So I'm going to go back to my stock library. We're going to go to Legacy, grab hip hop kick drum. Oops, all right. That's a nice solid kick drum. We'll drop that in there. Cool, so now we got our snare drum here. We will delete all the stock snare drums. We're going to use the same MIDI pattern, so it's going to still be funky drummer, but it's going to be with different drum sounds. So we got our pad right there. Let's try this one. That's a nice snare drum. We'll drop that in there. So we got our hi-hats here. Let's delete those guys. And go ahead and grab a hi-hat. Drop it in there. And now we have the new version of Funky Drummer. Sounds better, right? So you can go and play with the MIDI score in the piano roll, meaning the pattern, right? And if you wanted to add in some more hi-hats or whatever, you can do that. You just want to make sure you change the grid, perhaps the half beat. Maybe add another hi-hat there. Maybe add another kick drum. Maybe you don't like that many snare drums, so delete one of them. Now we still have the open hat here, so let's go ahead and see what that corresponds to on here. Let's click on it on the piano roll. We see it's this one right here. Let's delete that. Go grab the other open hat that we were using before, or one of the other hats from the real drum kits. And let's see. Cool, so that's right there. Let's drag it in here. And now, volume's too loud. Let's bring the volume down here. So what we just learned was the basics of boom bap drum programming using the sampler channels here. We also learned about the basics of the FPC, how to use MIDI scores, how to select drum sounds and replace drum sounds that are pre-existing, kind of play with the score a little bit in the piano roll. So if you like what you saw, be sure to subscribe to Speak with Beats YouTube channel. Also be sure to check out Today's Future Sound. That's my nonprofit. We teach kids beat making and DJing as a mental health and educational intervention here in Oakland, California, as well as all around the world. Please support what we do. Go to todaysfuturesound.org. If you want to cop the gear, we got the SP1200 and MPC gear, Beats for Lunch, our program at West Oakland Middle School. Be sure to go to todaysfuturesound.bigcartel.com. You can follow us on Instagram at todaysfuturesound, Twitter at TFS_beats, and Facebook, give us a like, Today's Future Sound. If you liked what you saw, be sure to give us comments in the comments section. Give us the thumbs up. Hit us up on social media, and stay tuned for the next episode.